So good morning to everyone, and it's very nice to be here this morning to discuss this topic of building inner stability. And my name is Sarah. It might be good to start with a few moments to contemplate this topic, since we're talking about stability. Let's reflect for a moment what it means for oneself, and can one experience inner stability? Just taking a moment of silence. Thank you. So, building inner stability. Often when the word stability comes up, we're thinking about being financially stable, or maybe stable with our relationships, and probably spending a lot of time to make those things stable. We're going to talk about inner stability. And a spiritual perspective says that we all have the seed of inner stability. We may not all have outer stability, although life we try to do that. But it's very encouraging to consider that we all have the seed of inner stability, and we all have the option to water that. And when we have that, there may be a better chance to create the stability in our lives as well. So what is inner stability? It's not something rigid. It's not something which creates stress, and it's not forceful. I think sometimes the idea of stability is in spite of something. We're trying to push for stability to be there when it may not be natural. Inner stability, we want to explore that it's a very peaceful experience. It's natural, and it maybe implies a kind of mastery, inner mastery. So it's like a sovereignty. When we're stable, we're peaceful. Then from that space we have power. We can operate and negotiate with the things in our lives. So we want to understand that kind of stability. And it's always nice to think of examples. So some examples come to mind when, especially under adversity, when those who had difficult things in their lives don't react in a way that you might expect with something very challenging. For example, the lady Frances Lawrence, who lost her husband, who was a headmaster, and he got stabbed in an accident between two students. They were fighting. He tried to break it up, and he got stabbed, and he was killed. And his wife, Frances Lawrence, had young children. And she says, "Don't define me by tragedy." And she took the situation, and she didn't blame the children. What she did say is she really felt this was a product of the society, and she wanted to do what she could to raise awareness of young people's difficulties. She understood the situation. So she reacted with a very stable space, you might say. And through her attitude, she actually managed to create a new school subject called citizenship that was rolled out in UK schools. And another initiative was, they called it the Philip Lawrence Awards. So that's celebrating the good things young people do. So from something like a tragedy, changing it, because she had that ability to stand back from the situation, obviously extremely difficult and still challenging today to some extent, but she doesn't want to be defined by that. And there are many examples like this. Recently, there was attacks in Paris, and a gentleman, Francis Leras, he wrote a very beautiful account directed towards the terrorists. He said, "You will not have my hate." He had a young child, and his wife was killed, and he had that different attitude. He wanted to, from that stable space, he wanted to move forward with his life, but not create an environment of regret and hate. And of course, great leaders, Nelson Mandela, what a vision he must have had throughout all the difficulties, that stability of purpose an aim which must have carried him through. So it's good to consider, what is this? But as we say, the spiritual model is we all have the seed, and we want to understand what that is. Maybe good to start small. We don't want to go for the big life changes, but very much to acknowledge what may help us on the journey. I very much like one quote, and there's nothing so stable as change. And maybe you know who it is, but this was by Bob Dylan. Any Bob Dylan fans here? There is nothing so stable as change. And I don't know what feelings you get when you consider this. What it reminds me of is the feeling of when one example is when you're in a coffee shop, we enjoy looking at the world going by. In fact, you could take this image. This is like a large window. You're in the coffee shop, you have your drink, and you're looking at the world outside. It's a world of change. And it's something extremely enjoyable about just watching. Sometimes call it people watching, but it may not be that you're sort of voyeuring. It's like you're just seeing this world the phenomena of change. And it's something pleasant to experience. And we don't get disturbed by it. We're enjoying it, this experience. So what is it that perspective has, that maybe if the world itself is a world of change, is there something we can, in our attitude, that we can experience that pleasure rather than resist this kind of change? So the question comes, what prevents us from experiencing inner stability? Should it be something inherent in us that we have as a perspective? What is it that stops this experience of stability? So obviously many things. We may change itself in our lives, big life changes. You may like to reflect on it for yourself. What is it that prevents inner stability? Also, not just external factors, people and the life being potentially unpredictable, but also our own reaction. Sometimes maybe the instability comes from a fear of my own reaction to something. And if something makes us angry, we feel, I don't know what I'm going to do because I feel angry about something. And that creates, compound the situation. So there are many things, but maybe let's take some examples. The things we have to deal with in our life. So one example, maybe you may be asked to do some public speaking, for example, or present something, or go to a job interview, something where you find, if you give it importance especially, you can create instability inside if a lot depends on it. So one example I had was I was asked to speak in front of a lot of people when I was on a visit to, in this case it was to India. And there were hundreds of people in India. The gatherings are huge. And I was waiting to go onto the stage, experiencing so much instability in that moment. The mind was really racing. It became very big in the mind. It's very hard to be stable in that case. But one really nice analogy that I heard, in this case, when we have that feeling of a situation maybe a little overwhelming, the analogy is that imagine you're flying in an aeroplane and you see the land below and you're enjoying the landscape, but you're also enjoying the sky. You have the controls. You know where you are. Everything is, you're flying. But when we have these emotions, it's like we lose perspective. We no longer see the horizon line. And when that happens, emotions are kicking in. We can't really they're not useful emotions either. They're telling us the stress response. There's nothing I can really do about it at that time. It's at that time we need to take control of the aircraft. understand we've been trained how to use it. We know the operating system. It's at that time that maybe I need to not really go into the emotions, take control. And in this case, analogy is that is our intellect. It's to use the intellect. It's to see very clearly the situation, take control, take by the hand, you understand the situation, but you're not going into all the emotions of it. As a consequence, you take control, you come back and the horizon line is there. And subsequently emotions become calm and you enjoy again the journey. So in this, the situation of public speaking, mind is really making it big. I just told myself it's not about me. It's amazing how it becomes very personal. I was thinking, actually, I reminded myself, anyone could be standing here. They actually wanted someone from a foreign country. It didn't really matter who that was. They don't know me. They won't really. It sort of diffused it. Certainly it's about them, and it's about something much more than I will understand as well, the bigger picture. So what happened there? It was a kind of detachment from the immediacy of what appeared big. Take that detached perspective, see just the analysis of the situation, and then everything was more calm, and it was very, very helpful in this case. So one example. Another example is change, and especially when it's our routine. And it's a source of great stability often for many of us. And I know when I moved from structured work, certain timings of the day that were given to me and the structure of the employer and everything, I changed and became self-employed. I felt very challenged by that, but at the same time, it made a lot of sense. So how do we manage change? Sometimes if one's starting a family or you change the country you're living in or the type of career, many people are doing this. We may feel disorientated. And so I think whilst it's exciting, it's nice to also have the calmness inside, that inner stability. We manage every situation with more joy. We can apply more enthusiasm, regardless of the job. So I feel in this case having an inner aim. So we often see lots of university students and lots of attention on the outer aim and the work and the career, but something which can continue with you is the inner aim. It doesn't matter what you're doing as a job or your outer life in this case. It's your inner aim is your inner mind stage. How do I react to the situations in my life? What's happening inside? What is the contentment? It's like, what is the quality of my inner life? And that goes with you, whatever you're doing. So it's worth paying attention to. And it's amazing how it's not something that we talk about more, although it's a subtle thing. One thing you might like is an inner timetable. So if your outer timetable changes, you have an inner timetable of the mind, like starting each day with some reflection. At the end of the day, checking what happened during the day. Every hour in the organization, they have something called traffic control. It's to check what's happening in the mind. And you become master. You become, motivation is from within. You're not doing it to please anyone else. That goes with you and that creates stability. And I thought that that aspect, it could be extremely sustaining. That may be a power of concentration. So we had detachment, and then we had power of introversion or concentration. And the third example, maybe we often feel the instability because of other people, other people's vision of us, and most of all criticism, if they criticize us. So what is the situation? And what is the solution? I remember when I was working on a project, I put a lot of effort in. I was enjoying it, but it was quite hard work and finished. And then a colleague came along and didn't say anything about what had been done, but criticized one thing, small thing. She was right, what she said, but I've observed inside a huge reaction and an instability, and I was also feeling, I don't know how I'm going to react here. But thankfully, I was quiet, and that was a saving grace. But I did still have a lot going on inside. You know, how we really feel others should behave differently, that could create a lot of inner instability. So in this case, I feel when it comes to other people, one way to maintain our inner stability is fullness, inner fullness. But what does that mean, and how do we get it? In this case, maybe self-respect, not being based on the actions in this case. So in that case, I was probably taking self-respect from that job well done without realizing it. I'd sort of, right, good, I had done well. When that person criticized one thing, that was as if something deflated and I went up and then down again. There was that instability. But if I have fullness not based on action, self-respect not based on the doing, but on something else, something deeper behind and beyond that, then we have the chance to have a continuity regardless of what happens and our own actions. It's a bit like in Cambridge, many people riding a bicycle, most of us know that it works. You're more stable when the tires are full. So keep your bike tires full, you're more stable. Keep yourself full, you become more mentally stable. And maybe the power is to accommodate. Then if someone criticizes, you can, okay, interesting. They were probably right, but I don't take that as up and down. I don't have that emotional roller coaster inside. So that's a power maybe to accommodate. So just to come back to this image, so we said that this is this place of change. This may represent the physical world. If we want to take another level, if there is nothing so stable as change, this window into the outer world, the physical world, is constantly changing. And if I want to be stable, there may be a perspective or a way of seeing it that offers me stability regardless of what's happening here. It's quite something to contemplate. In this case, detachment from it may be the first thing. Is there an inner being that is the observer of this outer world of change? Can the inner being be stable regardless? What would that feel like? But first, to detach from the immediacy of my emotions to it. Secondly, to concentrate and be introverted and consider this inner being, this observer. And then to see that that actually means I have the power to accommodate whatever that is. I may be able to have a different attitude towards what is happening here. So something to consider, and certainly meditation is key in this, that we need practice to become that detached observer, to take that inner aim to come closer to something which has a continuity regardless of what is happening out here.
One question: how to deal with negative thoughts and instability when we don't know where they are coming from?
How to deal with negative thoughts and instability when we don't know where they're coming from. It's a nice question. We often find in the mind many thoughts coming, and there is sometimes no apparent logic. There may not need to be a logic, but certainly we do need to create light to understand anything. We need the power of light. So in this case, just like when you have a situation happening to a friend, the one who is objective about the situation is much more likely to be able to see the situation clearly from that little bit detachment, one step back. So in the same way, if we have those feelings, some instability, best is to take that step back. Because within this, if I've got caught in something here, caught in change, I can't solve it with that mindset. The famous Einstein quote, you can't solve a problem from the same thinking that created it. So very much important to take a step back. As a consequence, you get clarity on the essence. What may be the root cause? It may not be what is initially coming up, maybe something deeper, but we need strength in order to see it. I hope that answers the question.
Another question. Does stability make you cool or too cool? Does it mean you're not going to respond anymore to anything that you see or hear? Do you still can show a caring nature?
Yeah, and that question is very important to clarify, because it can, especially the word detachment, which we mentioned, it can be very much misunderstood. It happens in a more subtle level, that you're actually more able to be present with a situation which previously caused instability, if you have this ability to be cool inside. It's cool in emotions, but not in the love. Sometimes more helpfully, the words which are in Hindi rhyme nyara, detached, and pyara, which is loving. And you can be more available for others if you are not being pulled by the negativity. You can actually concentrate on seeing the greatness of the other, and not the temporary passing situation of instability. But that's something much more beyond. It sometimes may appear cool, and there's nothing we can do about that. Sometimes if someone's coming to you with a lot of anger and emotion, and you don't speak, or best in that case maybe not to speak, that might definitely irritate the other. But in that case, it's maybe a good mirror, if the other one is in some instability, is to remain calm, and things will change. You don't need to lose your calm in order to solve any situation. So it would be very nice to practice what we spoke about, and to have the perspective of the stable observer and what it may mean. One nice analogy is that we have one more question before that. One more question.
If I am this subtle being that enables stability, how can I get to know myself when I am surrounded by instability?
Yes, we need to definitely create an environment of stability, but that may be physically, definitely to try to start to create stability when we're in a situation which we find quite provocative is not useful. Certainly to give oneself the opportunity to just create 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be a long time, but certainly for 5 minutes, a place where you won't be disturbed. And not to underestimate the power of the mind. In this journey, it's amazing to discover how your thoughts can create great power. You may just need 5 minutes, but with good concentration, to take a perspective of the stable observer. As we said, the seed is there, and it's a case of allowing oneself, giving permission to focus on it. And regardless of what's happening in the outer world, outer life, that is remaining. It continues. Just like when you might take 5 minutes to have a rest, life continues. This time you're consciously taking another perspective. So maybe we practice with that for a few moments. I'm going to use the analogy of the actor. And this stable observer, we can say, is the actor, and on this is a world stage are the roles. So maybe just for a few moments, you just concentrate on that. So always start meditation with making sure you feel comfortable and relaxed. In the physical body, and to see from the perspective of the stable observer. This means that the outer world, the physical world, is distinct. And for these few moments, we want to focus on the being. And this being is as if the actor behind the roles that I play on the stage. The stage is a place of change. Change is normal for the stage. But to take a step back with the eye of the mind, can contemplate what is beyond the place of change, beyond the stage. And it is in this atmosphere that the actor can wake up. This actor is not defined by the roles on the changing stage. This actor's nature is of peace. His nature is of silent joy. And it is in this atmosphere we can deepen this awareness. And this actor can remain stable. Is the observer of the stage. And this awake space means that whatever happens on the stage, there is stability. Because the actor is distinct, naturally full. From here, this stable observer, the actor, the being, naturally peaceful, comes onto the stage of change, knows that it is a place of change, and can accept everything because there is something beyond the stage of change. His nature is stability. And coming back onto the stage and performing all the roles. Knowing that this inner stability is only a thought away. It is a perspective. Can accept everything, but knows how to come out to see the self. Thank you. So thank you for joining, and I do hope that you enjoy your experiments with inner stability, and good to notice and appreciate and acknowledge the small experiences. Thank you.